Okay, welcome to The Ordinary American. I am your host, Paul Sarkis. It is Thursday the 26th. Holy cannoli, is there a lot going on. We really appreciate all the views. Please like, subscribe, follow, pass it on. We are trying to get as much digested information out to as many people as possible. We are fighting the left versus the right. This show is anti-leftist, which means we are anti-Democrat. No one should be voting Democrat right now. No one. There is no constituent group that benefits from Democrats being in power. Not even illegals, and obviously they shouldn't be voting. Even illegal aliens know that when the door is shut behind them so that no more come in, their wages will go up. So that's why you saw the border communities in Texas in the last election go so overwhelmingly for Trump. All right. The Ordinary American, we attack things from the ordinary American point of view. Every day I put together this show, I usually have a good idea of what to title it. Today was overwhelming. There was so much stuff. I feel like I could title every show, Trump is smarter than you, Democrats. He's smarter than you, Republicans. Or, Trump was right about what? Everything. Because every day there's an endless stream of incidences where he is just proven right. Obviously, he's been right about NATO. He showed what they were really like. They're done. He's obviously going to have Cuba rescued here fairly shortly. Who knows when? On the domestic front, obviously he's right. The Democrats are using the illegal aliens to corrupt the elections. Obviously he's right to name J.D. Vance, the vice president, the head of the effort to get rid of all the fraud and the stealing of our money. So today I decided I'm going to name the episode, The Democrats Don't Exist Without Stealing Our Money and Stealing Our Elections. They do not exist, but for those two things. Look at the elections. Everywhere we look, there's new voter fraud. We have the simple things like Wisconsin and Michigan and California and Georgia, and I'm trying to think of the others, Nevada, where we're finding out there's more votes than voting age people. That obviously can't happen, but it's happening. In Riverside, California, just in 2011, we find out that the sheriff is trying to do an investigation because they found out that there were more votes or votes cast than they have ballots. How is that possible? That has to be fraud. Even in California, where they control the entire state, that election I just referred to was an election where they were trying to get a ballot referendum on the question to do more gerrymandering, which we'll get to. That's in their own state. Why were they corrupting that election? Because they know that their citizens won't vote for that. When was the last time America had a legitimate election? When was the last time? 2012? I don't know. In 2012, the IRS went after the conservative groups, preventing them from getting nonprofit status during the election cycle, which helps them raise money and do the things that they need to do during the election cycle. How do we know that? Because the IRS settled, admitted they did it and paid $3 million and said, oops, we made a mistake. Oops. It's all corruption. The census in 2020, oops, we made a mistake. Made a mistake. Corruption. This didn't even get much press yesterday. That's how much Trump is getting done. He's got the Commerce Department doing a whole new census, an accurate census. And here's the brilliance of this guy. This is why I say he is smarter than the Democrats. He is right. I think he knows that is going to happen. It's in the Constitution that you got to do a census, but it's got to be done every 10 years. So the Democrats are going to go in and fight this. What does that do? Trump knows the Democrats are going to fight this. It exposes them They have to now go out and argue that we shouldn't do another census, even though the Census Department tells people openly, yes, the 2020 census was a mistake. It overweighted, I think it's like 6 to 8 votes to the Democrat side. Ooh, who would have guessed it was the Democrat side? Okay? It's all corruption. He knows this, but he's playing them. I don't know that he'll win that fight, and it may not happen. The next census may not happen until 2030, but he's going to fight it, and he's going to get the Democrats to have to go on the record constantly, and it's going to give him a talking point to say, why wouldn't we want a census that gets an accurate number? Okay? He's got that going for him, and he's going to push that and push that. So not only will we hopefully get a good census, but he's also going to be able to use it as a political weapon. Okay? Pardon me if you hear something in the background. I got my wife in the other room, and I can't shut this door at the moment. Live streams. Okay. So the Democrats don't exist. It's not a 50-50 country. It's not 50% this and 50% conservative, 50% leftist. It's not. It's probably 80-20. And it's getting more so to the conservative side. Why? Because of things like what Trump is doing with the census. That will play into it. But look what he did with the airport. He's now got ICE being talked about in glowing terms. Why? Because they're good at what they do and they are friendly. And when they are doing a hard thing like removing violent illegal aliens, they're hard and they need to be. That's protecting our border. Okay? But he's got them resurrecting, as he put it, their reputation, which they don't need to because they're already great. But the press was so insistent on saying that they were awful. And he cleaned up the airports so the wait times are back to normal. Showing that the Democrats are just looking to create the chaos and the suffering. So that's the title of the show, and we're going to get into that. But along with that, I was thinking, because it gets so dark, I feel like I'm super dark on this stuff, and it's a dark topic, I suppose. But what I was trying to come to try to get some lightness in it was I was thinking, I think a lot about the style of what is happening in the country and how it relates to movies, just how my broken brain works. And there's a great scene from Tropic Thunder, or scenes, with Les Grossman, one of the great comic characters of all time. Tom Cruise. If you haven't seen it, look it up. Les Grossman, L-E-S Grossman. He plays a producer, and he is so over the top between his whole getup and his makeup and his hairy chest and his big hands. But he does this thing where he gets on the phone through a series of mishaps with this terrorist organization where they're shooting a movie, and they have one of the actors held hostage, and they're looking for money. And he does this great scene where he's like, "Go F yourself," and it's all over the top and it's hysterical. I'm not going to do it justice. I hope you'll go look it up. And then he says, he hangs the phone up, and he says, "We don't negotiate with terrorists." And then everybody sits back and claps and everything. And it reminds me a bit of Trump. And I mean that in a complimentary way. Like, he put out a Truth Social to the Iranians saying like they're looking over our proposal. And he's like, no, you don't look over the proposal, bro. You sign the proposal because you're all already dead, or you're going to be dead. In fact, I noticed that I think the US and Israel had to say that the two top guys that they're negotiating with are off the kill list. I mean, so I contrast that with Star Wars. I'm not a big Star Wars fan. I saw the first 3 movies when I was a kid. I'm that old, and they were good. I thought I had a fun time. I had my lightsaber, and I wanted to be a Jedi like everybody else. But the macro storyline, certainly of Palpatine, is leftism, Democrats, and I will throw in neocons, City of London globalists, which we're going to get to today. In Star Wars, Palpatine comes off as this sort of avuncular or even grandfatherly, guy, and he's older, but he's really a Sith. He's really a Dark Lord. And what he's been doing for a long time is he's been going around and setting up scary, sort of potentially existential issues, helping the separatists sort of figure out how to, do their civil war, whatever it was called, through the Trade Federation, the Clone Wars. He does what I described before as the Three Stooges, ants in the pantry, which is what government is. The ants in the pantry is that the Three Stooges are, in one of their episodes, Ants in the Pantry, they are exterminators. They go around to the back of a house, throw in a bunch of bugs and rodents, and then go to the front of the house and said, hey, do you need an exterminator? That's what Palpatine does. He creates this conflict, chaos, suffering, fear, and then he waits and he puts air into that fire and he waits, he fans those flames and they get higher. And then the people, the Galactic Republic, they get so scared that they beg him to take dictatorial power, which he feigns reluctance at and says, I will only take it for a short period of time and then I'm going to give all this power back once we get rid of that big threat. And of course, he has no intentions of getting rid of it, echoing every leftist regime ever. Castro is always the one I like to point to because you can really do the research on it. His words were, give me 6 months and I'm going to get everything right. And then I'm handing the country back over to the citizens. Well, that was in like 1958. And he's dead and it's still not been handed back to the citizens because they're lying. Okay? So Palpatine is like the Democrats or the leftists or the neocons or the globalists, City of London, the people who are trying to, maintain their empire through wealth extraction and wars everywhere. Trump is something like Les Grossman. It's an imperfect comparison, I get it. But he's doing sort of what you might say is common sense. Like when you see Les Grossman, he deals with these guys by swearing at them and telling them to do rude and gross things that is hilarious. And it is what an ordinary American might look at and say common sense. Right. Now, it's more complicated than that because they've got an actor as a hostage, and he's willing to let the guy die and collect an insurance policy. It's very funny. It's worth watching. So it's not a perfect analogy. But I saw a little earlier, he was taking questions from the press and some dope asked him, are you going to go in and get the uranium and when are you going to go do it? And you can see him just sort of like roll his eyes and be like, yeah, why would I tell you that, he says. And he says, yes, we're going to do it at 3:00 this afternoon or something like that. That's an ordinary American's response to a stupid question. Not some wordsmithing and nonsense word salad about blah, 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 someday. He doesn't have to say that. He just says, that's a stupid question. It's, if you remember, the first guy I remember doing this really, really well was Bill Parcells back in the day. He would sometimes just say, that's a stupid question. And then, of course, Belichick did it as well. But it's like that. So I sort of contrast those two to try to show leftism, neocon, globalist, City of London. By the way, I got some questions about how can I putting neocons with the leftists? Because they have the end game the same. They want to extract wealth, keep everybody fighting. They never wanted to solve anything. How do I know they never wanted to solve anything? Because they never solved anything. They never solved anything. When Bush was in office, nothing was solved. Trump gets in office, and we're fixing and solving things. Imperfectly, lots of court fights, but solving things. The neocons and the City of London people, they have a similar end game, power and wealth extraction. Okay, so I think back and say, what would happen if we rolled the film back to, say, 1992, and if Ross Perot doesn't run? He has a right to run, he had good ideas and good thoughts, but he cost George Bush the election against Clinton. And not that George Bush was any prize, he was no Reagan. But we got Bill Clinton. And yes, Bill Clinton was a blue dog Democrat. He was considered, by the way, Bill Clinton running on his platform today couldn't get elected dog catcher in a Democrat primary. Not a chance. And as I pointed out before, even Obama in his 2008 race, on his platform, you can look it up, he was anti-same-sex marriage. He said marriage is between a man and a woman. Does that get elected in a primary for a presidential race this year? I don't think so. It's all been corruption. So I go back to that and I say, what if that hadn't happened? What if we didn't have trillions of our dollars being stolen every year? What if we didn't have these elections completely corrupted? I mean, the 2016 election was certainly corrupted. I think Bernie won that. I think Hillary made a deal with him, and I read somewhere that Bernie had a nonprofit and miraculously there was a big donation or something in there. But what happens to the Democrat Party if Clinton doesn't get elected and then roll the film forward? We never get the Clintons have been just a scourge on America. I can't help myself. I'm going to veer off of my notes here. The Clinton Foundation is the single greatest scam or crime endeavor ever done. Tony Soprano never dreamed about something so good. None of them. No mob guy could ever come up with that. It was the best and greatest crime family endeavor of all time. They were right out in the open. They got everybody to pay them. Donations nonetheless, which means that the donors got tax deductions. So not only did we get scammed by them, but then we taxpayers were giving out tax credits or rather tax breaks to the donors because they're donating to a nonprofit. Getting back to the fact that the entire system is corrupted. And they had better than immunity. They had basically what went on in Boston. Anybody from Boston remembers the Whitey Bulger, Stevie Flemmi case when the FBI was completely corrupted and just running interference for them and taking out the bad guys, which, by the way, Mueller played a role in keeping 4 guys who were innocent of the crime they were convicted of, which was murder, in jail. In 2 cases, I think they died in jail, and in 2 other cases, they got out. They ended up getting over $100 million from us because the FBI set them up and put them away to protect the other gangsters. Okay? So we've got all of this corruption, and the Clintons are just like, they've got the FBI on their side, the CIA on their side, they've got the Attorney General on their side, they got the press on their side. They got a whole mountain of people who get, like brainwashed to say, oh, just ignore the fact that they destroyed phones that were under congressional subpoena. They destroyed hard drives that were under congressional subpoena. That the foundation would get these huge amount of donations when the Clintons were in power, and then when it was appearing that they wouldn't be in power again, the donations went down. And then when they thought they might, the donations went up. How much do they collect now? Compare that to what they were collecting when everybody thought Hillary would be president. Okay, so that was a tangent, but that's another form that the Democrat Party is pure corruption, and without stealing our money and our votes, they wouldn't exist. J.D. Vance is now going after the corruption. He started right away. I think he took, it's not a lot of money compared to what's going on, but he took a bunch of, I think it was 70 million he was getting back from somebody that was stealing it from us. But it's billions and billions in each state that they're finding it. I'm going to go over again because it's important to share. Doge, which has done a great job. Why do I say that? Because it's so fashionable to say Doge didn't do anything. Well, I never saw all of this corruption exposed before. Did you? I never saw it. I mean, who am I? I'm just a guy in front of my beautiful flag. With my flag on my chest, I love God, I love my family, and I love America. So I'm nobody. But I never saw all of this corruption exposed. Doge and Trump come in, and now we're getting exposed. So they're doing something. And what they found was $4.7 trillion a year of outflows from the Treasury General account was untraceable. They fixed it, so now that money's traceable. Why was it untraceable? It was untraceable because the people who were involved in that don't want it traced. That's fraud. Who is that? Congressmen, senators, regulators, all of them. They don't want it traced. They knew this. They've been down there. They've been in the system. Nothing happened before Trump and Doge. The federal budget rounding now, roughly say 7 to 8 trillion, 4.7 trillion we can't trace. Why shouldn't we assume the whole 4.7 trillion is fraud? I'll wait for a good answer on why we, shouldn't just assume that. Okay? I mean, I think the whole thing is fraud. I think all of our debt is fraud. I think certainly our deficit, if our debt is fraud, then our deficit is fraud. And that's Bruiser, the French Bulldog. That's not me farting. And I think that at some point, Trump might just do something drastic and aggressive as it relates to taxes. He's been trying, I know, he tried to do the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, and the Democrat states are trying to thwart that. By the way, again, go back to one of the main drivers of the show. Nobody should be voting Democrat. If you are somebody who gets tips or works overtime in a state controlled by Democrats, Trump is trying to make that money tax-free and prevent it from being stolen like we're seeing, so you get to keep it. The Democrats are trying to tax it. Why would you vote for them? They're stealing it. If they're going to steal, I say this all the time, if they're going to steal our money, they should just stop taxing us. Because it doesn't really matter. It's not like they'll steal less if we're not paying tax. They're stealing what they want to steal. Why? Because they can print money. Off on a little tangent. This might be Tangent Day. Maybe that's what I should title it. The Democrat Party doesn't exist without the theft of our votes, without the theft of our money. Okay, so the Star Wars and the Les Grossman, if you want to laugh, go look up Les Grossman. It's really, truly one of the great comedy performances of all time. Just awesome. Okay. I want to move on to a couple of things. I mentioned briefly that didn't get any press, but Trump is working with the Commerce Department to get a new census. Why? Because the old census that was done in 2020 was acknowledged that it was corrupted. It is important for us to get a census that's accurate. There will be a big court fight. The Democrats will sue. Trump will use that to bludgeon them. He'll be right again, and the Democrats can't help themselves because they can't win without corruption. If they could win without corruption, they wouldn't do so much corruption. That was important to talk about. All right, we're going to move to some foreign policy things. It's a little heavy these days on the foreign policy just because of the Iran war. But a couple of things came up that I think are worth mentioning. Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, she announced, I think it was yesterday, that in 2022, the Biden administration intercepted communications between Ukraine and who we don't exactly know yet that showed that Ukraine was trying to funnel hundreds of millions of dollars back to Democrats to help in the race against Trump. Now, I never heard about that before. Did any of you? They never pursued it. Why didn't they pursue it? Because they didn't want to pursue it. This is always the answer with government. When something doesn't get done, it's because they don't want to do it. They can flap their gums all they want and say, oh, we're working on it, or blah, 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 blah. No, they don't. They don't want to do it. They knew in 2022, they knew that Ukraine was funneling money back to the Democrats. Oh, let me guess. Could that have been why the Democrats were so gung-ho about getting $100 billion of our dollars over to Ukraine? Because they knew it was coming back to them? Stealing our money, corrupting our elections. Always. Always. Let's see where that goes. We're going to keep an eye on that. We're going to see. I haven't seen it written much, but I think it's true that Halfwood-Harris raised a huge amount of money in a small period of time. And people like me were saying, I don't think she's raising that kind of money. Did it come from Ukraine? We're going to see. Always corruption. It's never on the level. Speaking of never on the level, RFK Jr., I mention him a lot. He is a superstar in the Trump cabinet. Why? Because it's hard work. There's a lot of, fumbles and missteps, but he is fixing the health-related regulatory apparatus at the federal level. He was out yesterday, the day before, with an interview where he said specifically, Biden administration said to the CDC, do not pursue fraud. That is not our goal. We are not interested in that. We want to get as many people to take the vaccine as possible. Don't pursue fraud. Given what we know of how much fraud there is, for the president to say, don't pursue fraud, the great Dan Bongino talks a lot about contrasts in politics. You're trying to contrast yourself with the other candidate. If you went out and said, I'm running against my opponent, Sam Shit, the rag picker, and he and I are very much alike, and, we differ on a couple of small things. What's the purpose of voting for you? Okay? It's contrasts. It's got to be big contrasts. Biden was obviously doing the fraud, overlooking the fraud, deep sixing the fraud, ignoring the fraud. Trump is putting J.D. Vance in charge of rooting out all of the fraud. He's got DNI Gabbard publicizing all of the fraud, including the stuff with the spying on him, his campaign. Now we find out, by the way, that they were spying on a lot more people than that. 2 or 3 years of Kash Patel's phone records and bank records and everything. I still don't know why these people that have been subjected to that don't have a lawsuit against the government, but that's for another show. That's a contrast. RFK comes out and says, Biden administration said don't pursue the fraud. Trump administration is pursuing the fraud. Every American who's legitimate should be happy that we are trying to pursue fraud and should hate when fraud happens. That is stealing our money. And that should not be okay with anybody. Unfortunately, it is. Because as I said, I think it was yesterday, the TDS sufferers, the Democrats, the neocons, they hate Trump more than they like America. I don't even use the word love America because they don't love America. They love their power and they love that America provides them an unbelievable life and money from us. but they hate Trump so much that they're willing to hurt America. And that contrast, give up the fraud, don't look for it, deep six it versus going after it. That's a big deal. That's a big deal to me. Okay. What's been happening on the international scene? We're down to whatever, like 767 guys on the depth chart. They're all gone. There's somebody in charge. Trump had to say the other day, I don't want to say who it is because I'm afraid they'll get killed. They just came out and named 2 guys and said they've been taken off the list. We assume that was to get those guys to, fully engage and realize we'll give you a few days, but we know where you are. It's important to see what's been happening sort of under the surface. The common, very popular point of view in some circles is to say Trump never had a plan, he's an idiot. As I said yesterday, although I couldn't remember the full title today, I've got the full title down. Trump actually published his plan in December, I think it was, of last year. The National Security Strategy is what it's called. It was on my X account, The Ord American. You can get almost everything we talk about in some form or another on X. Give us a follow. We'll keep you up to date. They had the National Security Strategy laid out in writing. Okay? It's a plan. We can all see it, and we're seeing it now. And one of the things we're seeing is that Trump, because he's smarter than the Democrats and the neocons, Republicans, and the globalists and the City of London people, is he has isolated those people. And he's brought in sovereign nations and convinced them that commerce is more important than conflict. Here's some things that don't get much press. Lebanon has now, essentially said, no more Hezbollah, get out. Okay? You got the Palestinian Authority saying, we're with Saudi Arabia, we condemn Iran. You got Hamas now talking about, maybe we should do peace. He's got a coalition of, I think it's Turkey and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and a few others in that area working together on the new peace plan. You'll notice the Susan Kokinda and Barbara, I forget her last name, Boyd, maybe, at Promethean Action. I mention them a lot. They do unbelievable work on this. They mention this. This is the Board of Peace. Who's not involved? England, Germany, NATO, the UN, not involved. Why? Because Trump's getting rid of them. The UN is rumored to be going out of business because we're not funding them. I suspect what Trump did with NATO with regard to the Straits of Hormuz is going to be their last breath. And he's got a group of sovereign nations working for their best interests, but commerce over conflict. I'm 58. I've never seen peace in the Middle East. I had to listen to that lurch, John Kerry. What a faker he is. Tell people, I think it was in the early part of Trump 1, where he was in some think tank saying, let's be clear, there is no path forward in the Middle East without a 2-state solution or a Palestinian state. Well, I'm looking around right now saying, I think he was wrong. I think there is a path forward without that. Trump's dictating those rules, and there'll be something there. But that wasn't created through the Palestinian Authority. That was created because Trump decided to do it with the Board of Peace. He's changing the whole game. He's bringing back the American system. I've been over before, but just briefly, produce things in America. Certainly produce, if you can, the important things. If you can't produce the important things, find a way to produce the important things. And until you can, make sure the people who produce it for you, you are tight with. The Japan deal. He has them invest in our energy infrastructure, nuclear mostly, and they in turn get to buy from us a bunch of energy, gas and oil. Why? Because they're completely dependent on imports. They win and we win, and it brings us closer together. The EU, this is again another thing that didn't get reported. The EU just approved, I can't remember the votes, but the EU to me is such a joke, 400 and whatever votes, that they will do a deal with America to buy 730 billion, I think, in energy, liquid natural gas plus oil and regular gas. 730 billion. Why? Because their green scams and their fear of the sun monster failed, and they have no energy. France is probably best off because they were doing nuclear, but they have no energy. So now Russia knows they have no energy. They come and do a deal with us. How much do you think the EU hated to have to approve that deal for fossil fuels, dirty fossil fuels? All that green nonsense, which is all the globalist nonsense that they do to extract wealth, fees and banking and insurance, it's fraud and corruption. As I say all the time, Donald Trump is the only real advocate for ordinary Americans. We haven't had one since Reagan, and Reagan lived in a different era, and so it wasn't like it is now. Donald Trump is the only advocate for ordinary Americans. Everything else that goes on in Washington, D.C. is a scam or corruption, or someone is paying, rent seeking. How can I say that? Let's go to the SAVE Act, the Save America Act. I haven't talked much about it because it's kind of, in my opinion, frustrating and another fraud. Everybody knows that we should have a photo ID to vote. 94% of voting age Black Americans already have a photo ID. So all this nonsense about, oh, it's a Jim Crow point too. Duh. No, it's not. Okay? Silly Schumer with that nonsense. And shame on anyone who falls for it. 94% of Black Americans voting age have a photo ID. So what are we talking about? 6% of people, we can get the 6% over the line. We can do it. Everybody knows we should have photo ID. And this is the charade of it all. This is the corruption. And this is what Trump does so well. He just calls it out. He just says it's fraud. They don't want photo ID so they can corrupt elections. Trump calls it out, and he says it directly to us, ordinary Americans, through his conversations with the press and through his X or social posts. Everybody knows it. Now, there's a lot of good information, and we should all definitely study the mechanics of the Senate and understand how the rules work, because it's not all that complicated, but they want us to think it's complicated, and they want us to think that they're special and they have special knowledge and it's only us that can figure this out and that's why we're down here. No. It's not like that. But I like to oversimplify things. That's how my brain works best. Very simple. Ordinary American stuff. It comes down to this. We are not getting the Save America Act passed because John Thune does not want to pass it. If he wanted to pass it, we would pass it. It is that simple. He's the majority leader in the Senate. I've been over this before. In House and Senate, both in DC and in the states, the Speaker of the House makes most of those decisions. Most bills don't go through unless the Speaker of the House says okay. Same thing in the Senate. That's how it works. It doesn't matter if you are a senator who won some big important race in some big important state, and you go down to Washington and now you're a senator and you ran on being with Trump, and you ran maybe on the Save America Act, and you go down there and you're like, yeah, we're going to vote for it. No, you're not. Not unless the Senate president says so. Why? Because even though you won with all that behind you, MAGA and Trump and the Save America Act, when you get into that body, it's like you're a freshman and you're starting over. You get your assignment of office, of committees, of staff, of extra help, of everything by playing ball. And if you don't, you don't. The Senate's a little different because they can stay there for 6 years. The House, they can run somebody against you. So the only reason we don't have the Save America Act passed is because John Thune does not want to pass it. I don't know, I mean, obviously he doesn't want to pass it because he wants the elections to be corrupted in some way. I don't know what his specific is. I don't know who he's protecting. I don't know if it's just anti-Trump. But we could do it if we wanted to. I'm not going to get into all the rules. There's lots of other people doing it, and it's really important and it's good to do. But for my purposes, I look at it and say, I know that if we wanted it passed, Thune would get it passed. It's that simple. We don't get it passed because he doesn't want to pass it. Simple. That's corruption. I've never seen, no one's seen a topic that's so universally approved of. I forget the exact numbers. It's like 75% of Americans of all races, demographic groups, creeds, political parties, height, weight, whatever, want photo ID. All of them. That was Bruiser. He must be having a bad dream. He's thinking about the Save America Act. And yet they won't do it. And they won't do it because they don't want to do it. And then you might say to yourself, wait a second, if it's so popular, why wouldn't they want to do it? Because wouldn't they have to face the voters when the election comes around again? Aha, couple of things to keep in mind. One, in the Senate, they get 6-year terms. We forget things, other things come up. They're betting on the fact that when they have to roll around to be elected, you won't even remember this. That's one. Two, they're in that system. They want to rise up the ranks. That's a whole career in there for them. They're not public servants. That's a whole career for them. They want to rise up the ranks. They can't rise up the ranks if they're out supporting Trump when Thune doesn't want to support Trump. It's a giant scam. They don't feel that they are responsible for us. And the third reason why, I lost my train of thought, but I found it there. The third reason why is because they don't feel they work for us anymore. The elected class no longer believe they work for the citizens, partly because the elections are so corrupted. And when they're not corrupted with actual ballots and votes, they're corrupted by the IRS denying people nonprofit status, or gerrymandering, or the census, or the press just lying to us. It's all corrupted. They don't believe they work for us. So this is Lola the bulldog. She's coming in breathing heavy. There she is. Live streaming. Hi there. With Lola. Sorry about that. They don't see themselves as working for us because of all the corruption. And many of them, as we know, make way more money with their private little hedge funds trading on insider information than they do from their salaries that we pay them. So what's more important? Go along, get along. I'm going to keep trading on this information. Look at this. Corrupt. Trump's calling it out. He's the only advocate for the ordinary American. I just think that that is critically important. Now, Ron Johnson, he came out with an article, I think it was in the Daily Wire, which is a great read, worth your time. And he basically says, the Senate is broken and it's time to change the rules. I mean, that's kind of like, okay, Captain Obvious, bit for show, in my opinion, just like all these guys. He's already sort of staked his position. So he's forged his way as being maybe that contrarian. I've got some suggestions. Again, who am I? I don't know anybody in Congress. I don't have any say over anything. I'm just a guy who's observing and looking, sharing those observations here, sharing the information. And here's maybe some suggestions. He's right. The Senate is broken. Why is it broken? Because the founding fathers never intended for senators to serve 6-year terms and be elected by popular vote. The Constitution has senators being appointed by state legislatures and serving at their pleasure and can be called back at any time. Imagine today if we had that in place. You'd have to go and find out which state legislatures are Republican versus Democrat. Who's in charge? How can we get them to pull somebody back until the right guy votes the right way and gets the filibuster gone so that we can get the SAVE Act passed, Save America Act passed? The founding fathers tried to decentralize corruption and power by putting it back in the states. The elected class, elites, and experts in 1913 got the 17th Amendment passed, and they centralized and superstored corruption down in Congress. So Johnson's right, although he's playing and doing a charade because he knows nothing's going to come of what he wrote. But I would like to see Johnson lead the effort to repeal the 17th Amendment. Make it go back to the way it was. Advise and consent. Now it's control and prevent. Thank you, Lola. She agrees. It's wrong. He's right about that. But he's not really doing anything to fix it. Yes, when the Democrats get in, they will eventually get control of the Senate again. Hopefully not for a few more years, but when they do, they will get rid of all the rules and be able to do everything on majority. So the Republicans should do that now so that we can get some things done, including the Save America Act. Ordinary Americans, our money's being stolen, our elections are being stolen, our health has been stolen. Today I have not mentioned, but I am now going to mention all the health issue problems. Turns out, by the way, the federal government knew that the COVID vaccine caused strokes. Lola agrees again. Yep. And we have information from Pfizer that they knew that there was something like several hundred people who died from the vaccine right after they took it. And the federal government still put it through. And this is going to roll out over time, and we're going to see bad outcomes. This is why I say on this show, we are anti-leftist, and we need to stay healthy physically, mentally, and spiritually. Who's prayed today? Who's prayed? I've had to pray. I needed to pray. Okay? Develop a relationship with God. Greatest life hack. All right. We're going to wind the show down. That's a lot. There's a lot going on. We are winning. We are winning because Donald Trump is an advocate for the ordinary American, and he is not playing the games of the system or the galactic empire or anybody else. He's trying to build America from the ground back up. We will get in another day into the difference between the American system and what I would call sort of the Milton Friedman, free market capitalism system. There are some differences, and we'll get into it another day. But the American system is working. Trump is leading us, and we're getting pulled out of this quagmire. We got a lot to do. But so far, so good. So at the end of a dark show like this, let's be positive. Lola, you're awfully loud. I think she's happy. Let's remember that we live in the greatest country in the world. We lived through a coup to take it back, and we'll see what happens with that. And now we have a chance for the midterms to continue to allow Trump to finish up his second term, doing all of the great things that he's been doing and more. All right. We hope you join us every day, 2 p.m. here on Rumble and YouTube, where we talk about faith, freedom, and all things MAGA. The email, theordinaryamerican@proton.me. The X account, theordamerican. I put everything over there. We appreciate you being here. Please like, subscribe, pass it on. It helps us get it out to as many people as possible. And this is a battle between the left and the right. I'm rooting for you. Please root for me. See you tomorrow.